So, for you, Dwayne, how can instructional designers use AI during the design process, such as brainstorming, content development, scenario creation, assessment design, or even learner support?
Yeah. So when I think about this, right, we kind of talked about that iterative process, but if we looked at Addy, I mean, AI can have a role in all of the different phases. We think about analysis. Well, if you have a bunch of data, it can help analyze that data, right? It's very good at pattern recognition, and so you can actually use it in the analysis phase to better understand the audience. You know, Maybe you have a bunch of like quiz results or test results. Again, you don't want to use personal information, make sure that all that stuff's gone, right? But you just have the data. Maybe you can help the system identify highly missed answers. So then that indicates where you need to maybe put some more emphasis on in the design, right? To meet that objective, right? So there's some there. We could talk about different ways, like again the brainstorming. Hey, I have this. I'm doing this topic, and I'm thinking like this. Can you suggest three different ways that this could happen, right? And it just again that brainstorming piece and see what it comes up with. Uh, I got one prompt, and I'll share it with you, Jackie. That I asked, I wrote it out to help me think through how do I make assessments AI resistant,
Mm,
right? And it does produce some decent. Some of them are just silly. You're like, okay, all right, that's just not going to work. But some were like, oh, that's not a bad idea, right? And how do I apply that in my context, right? Start thinking through that. Uh, what I like the idea about on the student side is if you can provide these tools can provide some level of scaffolding, right, for a student. But if it's not, it needs to be set up to where the student's still going to be able to exercise that cognitive effort you are while they're using the tool and not just provide an answer, right? So I sometimes will build things, I call them a Socratic engine, right? So if you put in a question, it's going to give you another question, right? It's going to probe it and kind of get you going in the right way to find that answer and to encourage that critical thinking piece of it. So
right.
by itself, if we just give an open AI tool to a student for support, I, I'm a little concerned there because we probably are going to maybe reduce that cognitive effort completely. Right, a student has the ability to kind of copy and paste the assignment instructions and hit go, and then copy and paste into and the cognitive effort that you're trying to achieve, it just didn't happen. Right, and it's
Right.
probably going to produce a pretty decent polished product that might be hard to tell, right? That was actually produced by an AI tool. So, but in specific ways, for student support, I definitely could see where it could be used there. And then in the evaluation phase, again, you're collecting data, and these systems can help analyze that data, and may pick up on things that we wouldn't have thought of, or as we're looking at the data and what it means and what does it mean in our design and iteration.
So true. I love that because, I do survey development during the needs assessment phase. And what I do is take that's the output of the survey from my faculty and I'll stick it in our AI model and I'll just have it look for those patterns and those key themes. And I'll use that for my program kickoff meetings. But it's really nice at the end of that too, when we can look and see, okay, now the students are in the courses, they've been in it for 1 or 2 semesters, right? And then we can look at all that data from the faculty, from the students, from their end of course surveys, because we have faculty and students doing end of course surveys. So it's really helpful to see, is this an issue just on the faculty side, or are the students having trouble, and where are they getting stuck, right? So it's
Y
really helpful
Yeah, because
to
if you can
use that.
identify those pain points, right, that's super powerful, and
Right.
and it can do it much quicker. You just have to sit down and think of, what data am I, make sure the data is clean and, and develop out what that analysis looks like and have that, but yes, it could absolutely produce some really insightful, information.
Right. Instead of you trying to, as a designer, dig through all that information, which is what we used to have to do. And I still like looking at the raw data, but when I want to look for those patterns and those themes, I really like being able to utilize that during surveys and observations, things like that. And also just, being able to wade through all that data a little bit better.